So instead, what we're going to do is I saw this and I thought, oh, okay, this should be interesting. Because this one is, okay, you guys have heard me talk about Tim Hortons before, right? Yeah, you guys have heard me talk about the Canadian the Canadian Dunkin' Donuts, basically. So Tim Hortons for a while, yes, Leon, yes. They Tim Hortons used to be great. Their coffee used to have been like renowned. Their coffee, once upon a time, was like world renowned. It even made it into How I Met Your Mother a couple of times, which I don't know if this video is going to talk about, but there were a couple times in the TV show How I Met Your Mother when Barney follows Robin into Canada and they actually go to a Tim Hortons and he actually says, "This is damn good coffee." So, but the entire business has gone downhill really badly. This video came out not quite a year ago that goes over how Tim Hortons managed to ruin its brand. I know of one way. I'm curious if there are other ways that Tim Hortons somehow managed to ruin its brand. So let's take a look.
Have you noticed something off during your recent visits at Tim Hortons? Maybe it's the long waits at the drive-thru. The odd...
Yes! Oh my god. Okay, right off the jump, 6 seconds in. Yes! Fucking yes. When I used to go to work, once upon a time when I was living in Newfoundland, every morning when I would go to work, I would go through the Tim Hortons drive-thru to get myself a coffee and get myself a breakfast sandwich. And at first, it was fine. Before too long, though, I was literally sitting in line for like 20 fucking minutes just to get a coffee and a sandwich. The drive-thru lines got absolutely fucking insane. And the in-store times got insane too. Like ordering at the counter, it got bad that late too. Like overall, this service just went straight to hell.
Taste of the food, the decline in cleanliness, or that overall sense that the magic just isn't there anymore.
And the coffee was not as good either.
The Tim Hortons we once loved is fading, and it begs the question, what went wrong? Why has an experience that was once so comforting and familiar now become so frustrating? I'm sure I am not the only one who remembers when Tim Hortons was more than just a stop for coffee. It was a warm, welcoming part of our daily routine. So, what happened? Whether you've been a loyal fan for years or are new to the brand, you've likely noticed the shift. Is it the result of management decisions, increased competition, or has the brand simply lost touch with what made it special?
GBP, yeah, point of fact, I think Tim Horton restaurants have actually made their way into the United States. Very few. There are a couple that I've heard of that did pop up in the United States, and I do know that their coffee gets sold in some stores that like just sells coffee. That some of them sell Tim Hortons coffee. So yeah, there's a few, but not many at all.
In this video, we'll dive into the key factors behind Tim Hortons' decline, exploring how corporate decisions and cost-cutting have impacted the brand's identity, the shift in customer expectations that Tim Hortons has struggled to meet, the increasing competition from other coffee chains, and the noticeable decline in product quality and service.
Yeah, that I think is a big factor.
Join me as we break down how this Canadian brand slowly but gradually lost its way. Tim Hortons' story starts in 1964, when Tim Horton, a hockey player known for his grit on the ice, decided to take a shot at something completely different, the food business. He opened up his very first donut shop in Hamilton, Ontario. Tim had a simple dream.
Wow! Okay, let me move you, Twitch chat, let me move you guys real quick. The sign has not changed. The style of the sign is the same today as it was back then. Oh, that's impressive.
create a cozy place where people could enjoy freshly brewed coffee and warm donuts. Even with the demands of his hockey career, he was all in on this new venture, seeing the potential for it to grow into something much bigger.
I suppose the only thing that could influence my retiring or giving up hockey would be that things are quite hectic these days, trying to combine business with hockey. And
Okay, side tangent. Chat, does anyone else think that this looks green screened? I'm guessing that in the edit they basically rotoscoped out the actual background behind him and they just put stock footage behind that. Yeah, it looks so odd. It literally looks like it's green screened. But I'm guessing it's just like clever editing.
if the business that I am involved in continues as it is, I may have to consider retirement before I would like to.
That's the Tim Horton Donut Emporium?
Yes, Tim Horton Donuts, Ward, and it's very nice to be able to let me get a word in about it. If I may take the opportunity, I would like to, well, heck, I'm going anyway. I'd like to say thank you to all you nice people in the Hamilton and Burlington districts, and in Galt and Brantford and Kitchener-Waterloo.
I think it's just editing, Iron.
Donuts.
We'd like to thank you.
Yeah. When I don't know if it's the person from this video or someone did some editing where they rotoscoped out the background around then and replaced it with this stock footage of an ice rink behind it. Yeah. Oh, Tim Hortons, I think, is a perfectly decent guy.
A few years later, in 1967, Tim realized he needed some extra help to really take things to the next level. That's when he teamed up with Ron Joyce, a sharp businessman with a keen eye for business opportunities. This partnership was a game changer for Tim Hortons. With their combined efforts, the brand started to take off, quickly expanding across Canada. Their shared vision and relentless work turned a single donut shop into a growing franchise. In 1974, the Tim Hortons story took a heartbreaking turn. Tim Horton tragically lost his life in a car accident at just 44 years old. His death was a shock to both the company and the entire nation. Tim wasn't just a sports hero. He was the face of a growing business that had already started to weave itself into the fabric of Canadian culture.
I did not know this about Tim Horton. I was not aware that he died tragically in a car accident so young.
But despite this devastating loss, the company had to find a way to move forward, with the future of Tim Hortons hanging in the balance. After Tim's passing, Ron Joyce faced a critical decision. Understanding how important it was to keep control and continue the legacy they'd built together, he made the choice to buy out all of Tim's shares from his widow, Lori Horton. This move made Royce the sole owner of Tim Hortons, giving him the ability to guide the company through such a difficult time. While some people questioned his decision, Royce was determined to stay true to Tim's vision and push the brand even further. Royce's decision to take full ownership marked a major turning point for Tim Hortons. Under his leadership, the company continued to expand across Canada. Thanks to his entrepreneurial mindset and commitment to the brand's core values, Tim Hortons didn't just survive after the loss of its co-founder, it thrived.
Yes, it did. That I, as well as any other Canadians in the chat, can attest that Tim Hortons did indeed thrive. You honestly, you cannot go into any Canadian town throughout the entire country and not have there be at least probably 2 Tim Hortons in any given town in Canada, like a sizable town. They are as prevalent in Canada as Starbucks is in the U.S. If you wanted a comparison, yeah, Leo, that's exactly where I went. Yeah, it is literally like Starbucks of Canada. Like every town that I have lived in Canada has had at least like 2 Tim Hortons in it.
Cheer 100 rent for the brain cell.
Thank you, Leo. So yeah, it is when no, Kendrick, it's more like Canadian Starbucks because realistically, Tim Hortons was no. Oh yes, you're right. Thank you, Atanashi. Tim Hortons is realistically more like Starbucks because Tim Hortons, honestly, is more well known for its coffee than its donuts. Excuse me. People will get like they people would go to Tim Hortons for coffee far more frequently than they would for donuts. I went to Tim Hortons for the coffee versus the donut. Yes, I would sometimes get a donut there, but more often than not, 9 times out of 10, when I was going to a Tim Hortons, it was to get coffee because their coffee used to be fan-fucking-tastic. So that's why I equate it more with Starbucks versus Dunkin' Donuts in terms of, comparing it to a US coffee shop. And yeah, they are everywhere.
Tim Hortons' legacy lived on, not just in the name on the storefronts, but in the continued growth and success of the franchise he started a decade earlier. In 1976, Tim Hortons introduced something that would go on to become a true fan favorite: the Timbit. These little bite-sized donut holes were made from the leftover dough of regular donuts.
Wait, when did they say it happened?
Was as clever.
Hang on. When did he say it happened?
In 1976.
Okay. Research strays. I need research from you. What came first? Timbits or donut holes? Somebody research that real quick. I'm legitimately curious if Tim Hortons actually pioneered the donut hole or not.
Tim Hortons introduced something that would go on to become a true fan favorite: the Timbit. These little bite-sized donut holes were made from the leftover dough of regular donuts, and the idea was as clever as it was delicious. Not only did it cut down on waste, but it also gave customers a new, super convenient snack option that quickly took off.
Yes,
Timbits added a fun twist to the Tim Hortons menu, perfect for folks looking for a quick treat or something easy to share. Their small size and low price made them an instant hit for families, office gatherings, and casual get-togethers.
Okay. So Munchkins came out in 1973 before the Timbits. Okay. I wasn't sure. I was curious which came first. So Munchkins came out first. Although that being said, there was probably not a whole lot of communication between the US and Canada in the mid-70s in terms of, donut restaurant tours. So my guess is probably when they came up with the Timbit, they probably thought, holy crap, this is we just invented something brilliant. Probably didn't realize that Dunkin' Donuts came up with the Munchkins 3 years prior. But yeah, it was the first time in Canada. Let me put it that way. It was the first time in Canada that there were donut holes.
Over time, Timbits became more than just a snack. They became a symbol of what Tim Hortons is all about. It wasn't just about coffee and donuts anymore. Tim Hortons had officially become the go-to spot for a little something extra.
This is true. Realistically, when people go to Tim Hortons, they don't think of donuts so much anymore. They think of the Timbits. They sell Tim Hortons sells more Timbits than they do donuts. Yeah, it absolutely, I would say it became a cultural thing where it was common for businesses, for local businesses that a manager or something would pop into Tim Hortons and get a giant I think it was a 2-liter jug of coffee and a box of 20 Timbits to put in the break room for employees to snack on throughout the day. They didn't get a dozen or 2 dozen donuts. They got a box of 20 Timbits. So yeah, it absolutely became a cultural thing.
As Tim Hortons continued to grow and innovate, 1985 introduced one of its most iconic promotions: the Roll Up the Rim to Win contest. This annual event quickly became an integral part of the Tim Hortons experience, forging an even stronger connection with its customers. The concept was...
And I don't know if he's going to go into this or not, this roll up the rim was great. People always looked forward to roll up the rim. It's pretty much gone now. It doesn't exist in its current form anymore. You no longer roll up the rim to win a prize. Now it's all digital. If you wanna, no, mechanism, it's not rigged. It's not rigged. It went digital, and he may talk about that in this video. Roll up the rim is no longer, because you'll see, like, you actually literally roll the rim up to see if you won a prize. You could be a free coffee, free donut. They did other big prizes, kind of like similar to Monopoly, where you could win like a camping gear, or you could win a trip, you could win a car. You know, that kind of roll up rim. J10, they don't have anything now. Roll up the rim is exclusively on the Tim Hortons app. It's no longer on the cups themselves. When they do roll up the rim, you have to have the app. You have to have an account with Tim Hortons in order to partake in roll up the rim. Because what happens is when you make a purchase, when you get to the counter or you get to the window, you hold out your phone with the app that has a QR code. The QR code gets scanned during your purchase, and then you get your roll up entry on the app. And so people that don't want to have the app, you're shit on luck. Well, and Leo, McDonald's still does the Monopoly stuff. They do. McDonald's actually still does the Monopoly stuff with the physical pieces and the physical boards. The app is in a companion category where you can do like an extra entry into a contest that runs right along with the Monopoly. So the Monopoly is still in its current form. You actually peel the stickers off. You have like a board that you would like put stuff on. That still exists for Monopoly or for McDonald's. But the roll up the rim for Tim Hortons, it's gone away. I remember they used to actually sell little like keychain attachments that you could get specifically for way at the rim. Norm, maybe in the US. In Canada, the board is also physical. You also get a physical board, you have physical pieces. So maybe in the States they did away with it, but in Canada they still have the paper boards. But they actually used to make these little accessories that you could buy like at certain like mom and pop gas stations, where it was like instead of having to roll up the rim with your fingers like we're gonna see, it's a plastic thing that you would put over your rim, squeeze and pull up, and it would roll up the rim for you. And you wouldn't have to like work the rim up with your thumbs. It would just yoink it right up for you. It's really cool.
Simple, but super engaging. After finishing your coffee, you'd roll up the rim of the cup to reveal whether you'd won a prize. From free coffee and donuts to cars and cash, the excitement of discovering what was under the rim became a ritual for many. More than just a marketing strategy, Roll Up the Rim fostered a deeper relationship between the brand and its customers. Each year, the contest generated excitement, with people eagerly anticipating its return. It evolved into a cultural phenomenon in Canada, where friends and coworkers would share their wins or joke about the inevitable "please play again" message. The contest had a tremendous impact on the Tim Hortons brand. It didn't just drive foot traffic and increase sales. It also reinforced the community spirit that Tim Hortons had built over the years. With Roll Up the Rim, Canadians had yet another reason to choose Tim Hortons over other coffee shops, further embedding the brand into daily life.
Did they, David?
As Tim Hortons entered its peak years, it became obvious that this wasn't just another coffee shop chain. It was turning into a true Canadian icon. Throughout the late 70s, 80s, and 90s, Tim Hortons was growing at a rapid speed. It felt like every small town and big city across Canada had its own Tim Hortons, and people
Really, LaRuck? You're a friend of your dad's won cash 2 years in a row. Very nice. Very nice. And what point of note, the reason why so many people were so excited about the Roll Up the Rim is because it was like one in like 3 or 5 cups was a free coffee or free food. So you're kind of winning all the time. And you're winning prizes that you will actually use. Because if you're rolling up the rim in a coffee, you obviously drink coffee. So if you win a free coffee, well, bonus. And you are winning free coffee fairly frequently. However, I suspect as the years progressed, they started lengthening, or they started distancing that kind of winnings, where they started spreading out the free food prizes even further, going from maybe 1 in 3 or 5 cups were a winner to like 1 in 10 cups were a winner. I do think that they started spreading out the winning cups, so they wouldn't have to essentially pay in, quote unquote, as much as they used to.
It felt like every small town and big city across Canada had its own Tim Hortons, and people quickly made it a part of their daily routine.
Tim Horton Donuts have baked up another fresh idea. Introducing Strawberry Tim Tarts, a flaky tart shell brimming with rich,
Interesting.
smooth custard nestled with fresh glazed
That's not still
strawberries.
around.
Come and discover Tim Horton's newest pastry treat everyone will love, Strawberry Tim Tarts. It's just one of the tasty Tim Tarts.
Yes, Bob, I think we actually covered that on the channel. And I'm reasonably sure we did a react to the McDonald's Monopoly insider cheating thing. Like the guy that did it was like in with the mob. And he got involved with the mob and the winnings, and he was acting like he was a mob. He was acting like he was a gangster. I'm pretty sure we covered that on the channel.
Everyone will love, Strawberry Tim Tarts. It's just one of the tasty Tim Tarts you can try at our place and take home for dessert.
Yeah, and those Tim Tarts
Tim
don't exist
Horton
anymore.
Donuts.
They're gone.
Fresh from your friend along the way.
The company's dominance in the Canadian market was undeniable. By the early 90s and early 2000s, Tim Hortons had completely outpaced its competitors, including McDonald's, becoming the go-to spot not just for coffee and donuts, but for full meals too. Its influence was so strong
This is
that
true.
many Canadians couldn't even imagine their communities without a Tim Hortons nearby.
Still can't, honestly.
You just want somewhere to go that's relaxing, have a good cup of coffee, you know, just see people that you normally see. There's nothing like coming to Tim Hortons, especially our regular ones, where they actually know and they ask us how we are and how.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing. Tim Hortons, especially in the smaller towns, were like community meeting places. Like, it would take with, you know, not the major cities like Montreal or Toronto, not areas like that. That's with those big cities, you're not going to get this. But in the smaller towns, it was basically the same feeling as a local coffee shop. You know, when I did, when I lived back in Newfoundland, the Tim Hortons that was by me, you would go to Tim Hortons and you would see the same people sitting in it was big with older people, where the old folks would show up at Tim Hortons every morning. They would get their coffee, they might get a donut or sandwich, and they would sit down in the dining area with all the other old people that they knew. And they would sit there and they'd drink their coffee and they'd talk. And it was a very community kind of meeting place for, you know, the kids would all go to the Tim Hortons after school. They would all get, like, I don't know, maybe they get coffee, maybe they would get like a cafe kind of drink, and they would, or a donut, and they would all hang out outside the Tim Hortons after school. So it was a very communal location back in the day.
We're doing, and they actually.
Yeah, the ice
pretty
cap door.
lucky.
Thank you.
Like,
Yeah,
at
ice
this
caps.
Tim Hortons, I come here on Tuesdays actually. They come up and they go, okay, regular, and we've got one girl, she'll go, 1 large triple cream, and she'll say 2 with milk.
The brand had grown far beyond its humble beginnings, becoming an essential part of everyday life in Canada, a place where memories were made and a sense of community was nurtured. Whether it was through their iconic roll-up-the-rim-to-win contest or the simple joy of a few Timbits, Tim Hortons found a way to connect with people like few other brands could. As Tim Hortons solidified its role as a cornerstone of Canadian culture,
the biscuits.
the
I
brand
love
sought
their
out strategic
biscuits.
partnerships to fuel its growth. One of the most significant moves came in 1995 when Wendy's International Inc. acquired Tim Hortons in a $425 million USD deal. This acquisition was intended to be mutually beneficial.
Okay, I did not know that Wendy's bought Tim Hortons back then. I had no idea. Holy shit. Okay, this is news to me. Huh.
Allowing both brands to share resources and optimize their business models. Wendy's, which saw most of its customers during lunch and dinner hours, had unused seating during breakfast, while Tim Hortons had steady morning traffic, but slower lunch and dinner periods. The idea was that by sharing locations, they could maximize their profits and make better use of their spaces throughout the day. This led to the creation of co-branded locations, where Wendy's and Tim Hortons operated side by side under the same roof.
Which still exists today. Even though Wendy's does not own Tim Hortons now, there are still these buildings, these side-by-side buildings of Wendy's and Tim Hortons. I'm pretty sure the one near me is it is a co-building of Tim's and Wendy's. Taco Bell and KFC? Okay, Yard Dog. I didn't know about that. Young Han, thank you for the follow. Well, Revan, I eat Wendy's and I eat McDonald's. Oh, bro, these days I have, pardon me. I will have Wendy's more these days because, quite frankly, I find Wendy's hamburgers to be tastier than McDonald's and they're cheaper. So why would I not go for the tastier, less expensive option if I'm going to get fast food? So yeah, I still eat both, but these days I definitely prefer Wendy's over McDonald's. And Tim Hortons, I don't have Tim Hortons all that much at all anymore. Not even their coffee. Their coffee is just, that's probably one of the things that they're going to talk about is that the coffee for Tim Hortons goes downhill poorly.
These shared spaces, which can still be found today, were meant to increase efficiency and draw customers at all times of day.
Before I move a Tim Hortons for Buell there the foods is not the best and if it rain you do see a bucket on where you sit and the building just been Buell so take that as you will.
Well, I think, Pirate, I think that's part of this is talking about the downfall of Tim Hortons. So right now we're at the point in their history when they first started cooperating, when Wendy's first bought it and they first started doing the communal buildings together. We're not yet at the point where Tim Hortons falls off and people don't like it anymore.
By offering both breakfast and lunch dinner options. However, the partnership didn't unfold as smoothly as planned. Former Tim Hortons marketing executive Ron Buist highlighted the resistance from franchisees who were determined to keep the two brands separate. Franchisees even refused to allow Wendy's to sell Tim Hortons coffee in their shared locations. Additionally, Ron Joyce, co-founder of Tim Hortons, openly criticized the merger, calling it a mistake. It became clear that merging two brands with such different identities and customer bases was far more challenging than expected. By 2006, the tide...
Well, Atanashi, he says that it was a mistake. My guess is at the time, yeah, Warmoose, you probably got it right on the nose there. My guess at the time, it was all about the money. And the owner of the company probably was not thinking ahead to how would this impact the company post-merger. I don't know if Wendy's, how much Wendy's bought into it or what, but he clearly had buyer's remorse. Atanashi, even for someone that, is very committed to their ideals, if you put a big enough amount of dollar signs in front of them, those ideals can be bought. And who knows? Maybe the people at Wendy's talked a really good game and said, hey, this is something that can be very mutually beneficial for us, like was said in the video, where Wendy's has the lock on lunch and dinner, Tim Hortons has the lock on breakfast. So a merger of the two would benefit them both in the big way because they could combine their resources with Wendy's handling the lunch and dinner, Tim's handling the breakfast, and they all get the profit. So if I were to suspect, someone basically was able to Jedi mind trick the owner of Tim Hortons with this, along with a pretty hefty check, and facilitated the merger. Wendy's does have breakfast, J10, but particularly at the time of this merger, Wendy's did not have the breakfast options available to it that it currently does. Tim Hortons, on the other hand, did. So you have to remember the time period of when we're talking about here. This is what do you say, was the late 80s, early 90s? So you have to remember that with what time period is when they did this merger.
Had shifted. While Wendy's was struggling, like many other fast food burger chains, Tim Hortons was thriving and generating substantial profits. Recognizing the brand's success, Wendy's opted to spin off Tim Hortons, taking advantage of its peak value to make a profit. This decision ended their direct partnership and allowed Tim Hortons to regain its independence and continue growing on its own.
Okay.
Although the merger was initially intended to benefit both parties, it ultimately underscored how difficult it is to merge two brands with distinct identities.
Yeah.
In the end, the separation allowed both Wendy's and Tim Hortons to refocus on their strengths and better serve their respective customers. The Wendy's merger marked a pivotal moment in Tim Hortons' history, signaling the beginning of significant changes. Although Tim Hortons eventually regained its independence after parting ways with Wendy's, the experience exposed the company to the complexities of operating within a larger, global business structure. This brief period set the stage for future transformations, as Tim Hortons began to navigate pressures beyond its Canadian roots. Fast forward to 2014, and Tim Hortons faced another turning point with its acquisition by 3G Capital, a Brazilian private equity firm.
Yeah.
This was part of an $18 billion merger with Burger King, forming one of the world's largest fast food conglomerates under
And here we see the beginning of the end. This is where it started, chat. When Tim Hortons got purchased by this conglomerate, this is where the downfall started. This is where the quality of the food and the coffee starts to take a significant downturn.
Restaurant Brands International. But this was more than just a big business deal. It marked a critical moment for Tim Hortons. A brand that had always been a symbol of Canadian culture was now under the control of a global company known for its aggressive cost-cutting measures and relentless pursuit of profit. This shift introduced Tim Hortons to new global pressures, which ultimately moved it further away from its original Canadian identity and values.
Yeah.
3G Capital made a significant move when it acquired Burger King in 2010. Known for prioritizing efficiency and maximizing profitability, 3G Capital built its reputation through a strict, zero-based budgeting strategy, an approach where every expense must be justified from the ground up each year. While this method helped drive profits, it often came with job cuts and concerns about declining quality. When 3G Capital...
Yeah, because when you have to justify the costs for everything, you're going to be looking for cheaper alternatives when it comes to supplies. Because, leave us not forget, with major corporations like this, there are shareholders that will be demanding answers from you all the fucking time. And the shareholders don't give a fuck about the quality of the food. They don't. All they care about is how much money they're making. And so if they don't think that they're making enough money, they will demand you start cost cutting and going with even cheaper sellers of product, and thus reducing the quality of your products over and over and over again. And the shareholders don't care because they know that the people will still continue to buy it. Regardless of the cost cutting that they make to the supplier in regards to food suppliers, they know that customers will still eat. They'll still get customers, so they don't care. They just want an increase of their profits. And for a company like Tim Hortons, that was supposed to be a very Canadian brand that once upon a time had what was considered the best coffee. You get involved in a conglomerate that's like, well, yeah, your coffee's good, but you're paying too much for it, so now you got to go with someone different. And then the quality drops.
Capital later spearheaded the merger of Burger King with Tim Hortons in 2014. They formed Restaurant Brands International, RBI, the parent company that now controls both brands. With RBI in place, 3G Capital assured loyal customers that Tim Hortons wouldn't lose its identity. They promised their expertise would change Tim Hortons for the better, allowing the...
So that was a fucking lie. That was a motherfucking lie. Because it didn't. Not even slightly.
Brand to grow globally while maintaining its roots in Canada. The message... allowing the brand to grow globally while maintaining...
Okay. Chat. Come close. Come close. Closer. Closer. Chat, I'm going to give you a little bit of an inside scoop. See, chat, I worked at a Tim Hortons for probably about less than a year. I worked at a Tim Hortons. I worked at a Tim Hortons as a baker. I was the person baking the donuts and the crullers. I will tell you flat out, baked fresh is baking from frozen. There was no such thing as fresh. Every pastry, every piece of bread, all of it frozen. It was all frozen. You would basically go into the freezer, you would get whatever pastries you were looking to bake, and you would basically throw them into a convection oven, and quick bake it. It was I think it's a convection oven, where it would bake the donuts in 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. It was fresh frozen. Exactly. It was baked fresh frozen. None of it was baked. There's zero fresh about it. The meat, the bread, the pastries, the bread, out of it. That's right. I like to think so. Yes, Pride Delta, I know it's not a thing. It's a joke. It is humor. So yeah, this whole baked fresh throughout the day thing. Yeah, no, they were baked, but they were pre-baked and then frozen, and then we basically reheated them, effectively speaking.
Maintaining its roots in Canada. The message was clear. Tim Hortons would not only survive under RBI's control, but thrive on the international stage. They presented a vision of rapid global expansion, positioning Tim Hortons in cities worldwide. However, many Canadians were skeptical. The idea of expansion sounded promising on paper, but there was a growing fear that 3G Capital's relentless focus on efficiency and profit could erode what made Tim Hortons special.
Yeah, that's actually fairly accurate. That side by side, that's fairly accurate. Nowhere near as advertised.
Instead of the...
I'm getting hungry for donuts now? Should I go with Dunkin' or buy some from a store?
Good question. Does your local store have good donuts, Leo? It wasn't microwave robot. It was. It wasn't exactly microwave. You did put them in an oven, but it was one of those fast bake convection ovens. So it's not exactly like microwaving it. It was actually in an oven, which I will tell you flat out right now, chat, those ovens are fucking filthy. Well, yes, I had to clean the oven on a nightly basis. I will tell you flat the fuck out, particularly at the Tim Hortons that I worked at, the oven was nasty. If you knew how the cleaning of the ovens was facilitated, you might actually think twice about about buying something from like a food item from Tim Hortons. It's not great. The methodology of which you clean the ovens. They're not great.
And profit could erode what made Tim Hortons special. Instead of the familiar community-centered coffee shop, people worried that the brand would become another pawn in a corporate machine, driven more by financial gains than by the values of quality and customer service that originally defined it. The future of Tim Hortons felt uncertain, and for many, this transformation seemed like the beginning of the end for the iconic Canadian brand. But this promise of global expansion wasn't without concern. 3G Capital's history with previous companies raised some serious red flags. Take their 2013 acquisition of Heinz, for example. In partnership with Berkshire Hathaway, 3G Capital quickly put their well-known cost-cutting strategies into action. The effects were harsh. Just 2 months after the deal, 600 workers at Heinz's headquarters in Pittsburgh were laid off. And that was only the beginning. When Heinz merged with Kraft in 2015, the cuts became even more severe. Over 5,000 jobs, about 10% of the workforce, were eliminated. 7 plants were shut down, and the push for efficiency left many questioning whether product quality would suffer.
Well, Tanashi, based on what you're saying with Heinz hasn't been the same since, sounds like quality did suffer. Whoa. Tats. Yep, this is when you let someone that only counts the money run a food industry. They don't care about what the food tastes like. They don't care about the quality of the food. They only care about how much money they're making. Oh my God. Wendy's I worked at, when I closed the oven, caught on fire because no one cleaned it for a year. Jesus, Mose. Holy shit. The main bottle plant was turned into a high-class hotel. Oh, God.
For 3G Capital, making a profit came first, even if it meant laying off thousands of employees and allegedly reducing the quality of its products. With this history in mind,
Yeah, and I will also point out, they're cutting all of these costs, but they're raising the prices. All of the prices went up. Even before the financial woes that we are seeing today, costs for all this shit has consistently been going up year after year. Yet they're claiming that the downturn in quality is necessary in order to cut costs to keep the costs low, which supposedly would be passed on the consumer, yet the prices are consistently going up. So I'm smelling the bullshit on that one. It's more of, we're going to cut costs and raise prices so our shareholders get record profits every single year.
Concerns about Tim Hortons began to grow. The initial excitement of global expansion was quickly overshadowed by the reality of 3G Capital's track record. What started as a quiet worry was now a serious fear. Could the heart of Tim Hortons, the values that made it a true Canadian brand, be in jeopardy? The question wasn't just hypothetical anymore. It was turning into a real concern. Many wondered if 3G Capital's relentless focus on profit, which had already led to drastic changes at Heinz, could do the same to Tim Hortons.
Oh, it does.
The brand that once symbolized community and quality was now facing a threat to its identity. This tension between the promise of global expansion and the risk to Tim Hortons' core values left loyal customers feeling uneasy. They feared that the brand they cherished might be heading toward a transformation that wouldn't preserve what made it special in the first place. The fear of Tim Hortons losing its identity became a reality in 2018, when the brand found itself at the center of a major controversy. After Ontario raised the minimum wage from $11.60 to $14 an hour, this should have been a win for workers. However, Restaurant Brands International, RBI, Tim Hortons' parent company, refused to let franchisees raise prices to cover the increased costs. Left with no choice, some store owners, including Jerry Lynn Horton Joyce and Ron Joyce Jr., descendants of the founding family, resorted to cutting paid breaks and reducing employee benefit.
Lie. Holy fuck. Really? Cutting out paid breaks and cutting benefits. Oh, so you can continue to tell the shareholders you're making record profits. See, herein lies the problem with modern capitalism. And no, I am not going to be going on a socialist rant. I am not preaching for socialism here, so get that thought right the fuck out of your heads. But this is the problem with modern capitalism. The problem is that anytime something beneficial happens for the worker, where the worker can actually make a livable wage, the companies turn around and jack the prices up in order so they can continue to tell their shareholders, we're making record profits this year. And thus, the wage increase that occurs becomes absolutely null and void. We are literally playing a zero-sum game here. Every time minimum wage increases, for the purpose of, so people that work minimum wage jobs can live a decent fucking life, every business goes, oh, the minimum wage goes up, so we're going to increase our costs the same amount as the minimum wage increase or higher, and thus completely nullifying the minimum wage increase that just occurred. And you are back to square one with minimum wage workers that cannot pay to live. Because that's the whole purpose of increasing minimum wage, is so that the workers can fucking survive. But when businesses consistently match the increases...
Course, the corpo greed machine is fucking over the people.
Yeah. Bear in mind, this has been done for years. This is how it's been for years. Every time the minimum wage increases, all the businesses jack their prices up. Every fucking one of them, and it nullifies literally all cost of living. As soon as there's a minimum wage increase in a regional area, be it state, provincial, wherever, the minute that happens, all living costs increase exponentially. Every fucking one of them goes up, and it makes the minimum wage increase null and void. And all of the minimum wage workers are right back to zero again, where they are struggling to survive on a daily basis. And none of them, absolutely none of them, can ever get ahead, because the second they get an increase in their wage, all the other costs of living goes up at the exact same time. Why? Because the corporations that are increasing these want to be able to tell their shareholders at their annual shareholders meeting every fucking year, they want to be able to utter the words record profits. Every fucking time. They want to be able to utter the words record profits, because if they don't record record profits, the shareholders get pissy going, hey, how come I only made $2 million this year instead of $3 million this year? And they don't give a fuck that the poor schlubs that are working in the bakery, that are working behind the cash register, that are cleaning the bathrooms can barely make it every day. They just want their fucking millions, and they don't fucking care about, that they might actually not make quite as much money as they did last year because minimum wage went up. So therein lies my criticism in regards to capitalism. This is where my criticism is that when you're constantly playing yo-yo, where wages go up and then costs go up beyond the wage increase, people like lower skilled workers that all they can work is minimum wage jobs will never catch up, and they will constantly be in the status of working poor for all their lives. And it's fucking wrong on every conceivable level. You know, once upon a time, minimum wage was enough to sustain a single or family unit with at least the basics. Okay, minimum wage was never designed to basically make anyone wealthy. Ever. That was never the intention of minimum wage. But minimum wage could at least support the basics for a small family. At the very least, it would have been enough to provide the basics for them to live. Now, people work. I could not tell you how many people that I know work minimum wage jobs work like 2 fucking jobs. Like, all they do is work for 5 to 6 days a week. That's all they do is work, and that is just to survive. One minimum wage job, I will tell you flat out right now, is not enough for anyone to live on. A single minimum wage job, you will not, unless you are living with your parents and you don't have to pay any rent costs, minimum wage is not enough for any one person to survive on. It is not possible. It is simply not possible for someone to survive on minimum wage in the modern day. If you are living on your own, you will not have enough money to pay rent, to say nothing of being able to pay your electric bill, or to pay for food. And if you want to get to work, the means of which to get back and forth to work. It is not enough. And that's why most minimum wage people typically have 2 jobs just to survive. It's fucking disgusting. And until something gets done at the corporate levels where the corporations like accept that their shareholders are only going to make $2 million instead of $3 million by not raising cost of living prices, until that happens, it's going to continue. And the federal governments can raise minimum wages all they fucking want. It will never make a difference in the modern age. In the age of modern capitalism, it does not matter how much the minimum wage gets raised, because cost of living will always raise over and above the increase in minimum wage, and these costs will never come down. That is another factor. Even if you were to reduce the costs of minimum wage, say let's think crazy for a second. Say current minimum wage of $15. Okay? Say that minimum wage gets dropped back down to $10. Okay? Just fantasy land here. Okay, this is fantasy land. Minimum wage gets reduced from $15 back down to $10. Do you really think that all of the corporations are going to reduce the basic cost of living, like grocery or electrical or housing? Do you think any of that is going to come back down? Fuck no. They're going to stay right where they are, and they're only going to go up. It is literally a never-ending losing battle for people that the only thing that they're able to get is a minimum wage job. They will never get out from behind the 8 ball, ever. Because when prices go up, they stay up. They will never go down. Ever.
The most important thing is that these people deserve a wage that they can live on. They deserve to be able to
Doesn't
put
matter.
food on the table for their kids.
See, herein lies where the argument's wrong. The argument should not be these people deserve a living wage. That shouldn't be the argument. The argument should be the electrical company, the grocery companies, the food service industry companies, they should be bringing their prices down. That's where the argument should be made. Because the wages mean nothing, as I've already very verbosely discussed. You need to bring the prices down if you're going to do anything. Increasing the wages does nothing. It's a losing battle. Until you can get prices to come down, you will not fix the problem. You will not fix the problem until you actually lower the prices of the cost of the living. That is the only way this works. The only way. Constantly increasing the wages? Forget it. Put that argument to bed. Talk about getting prices down. That is where the focus needs to be, is reduction of price.
Not have to work 2 and 3 and 4 jobs just to pay the rent or the mortgage. And so this is about making sure that people have a decent life in Ontario. Ontario is a place of great wealth, great prosperity, and it needs to be shared. And that's why we're standing with these workers and with these activists. That's why I'm here to say to franchisees like these ones, back off.
Green Matter, I'm not saying that someone should not, that the company should not be profitable. That is not what I'm saying at all. I fully appreciate and understand that a company wants to be profitable. I fully appreciate that. What I'm saying is these companies aren't simply focused on being profitable. These companies are focused on reporting to their shareholders that they need record-breaking profits every year. You can be profitable without said profit being record-breaking. It is possible, and you can still be profitable if you reduce pricing. It is fully possible, especially with all the cost-cutting measures that have been put into place. It is absolutely possible to still be profitable while reducing your prices. If your focus is not on telling the shareholder, putting the words record-breaking in your quarterly reports. But they do. These corporations have to say record-breaking in every single quarterly report, or the shareholders go schizo.
And pay your workers a decent wage. They deserve it, and certainly you can afford it.
This decision sparked outrage across Canada. Employees were furious, and the Premier of Ontario, Kathleen Wynne, even condemned the move as a clear act of bullying. What made the backlash even worse was that it was directed at the founding family members, amplifying the damage to Tim Hortons' reputation. Many saw it as a clear sign of corporate greed. RBI's influence becoming more apparent, prioritizing profits over people. This incident was just one of several issues between 2017 and 2018 that severely tarnished the brand's image. Once a proud symbol of Canadian culture, Tim Hortons was starting to feel more like a corporate entity, disconnected from its community roots. The damage was visible in the numbers. By May 2018, the brand's decline in reputation was undeniable. In Forbes' ranking of Canada's most reputable companies, Tim Hortons dropped from 13th place in 2017 to 67th in 2018.
Holy shit. That is in one fucking year. In one fucking year. That is a massive drop. Holy shit. Yeah. And I guarantee you with Tim Hortons, where it says they were asked to score companies based upon these factors, products, I guarantee you they said the coffee sucks now. Because universally, it is agreed, Tim Hortons coffee is not good anymore. They switched their coffee supplier. They went with Burger King's coffee supplier instead of their own, presumably because it's cheaper, and now the coffee at Tim Hortons sucks. And as I mentioned this before, you know what happened to the Tim Hortons coffee supplier? They went to McDonald's.
As the friend of a certain talking dog says, jinkies.
Yeah, the crazy part is, the coffee supplier that Tim Hortons used to use, that was considered the best coffee around, even in the US, they went to McDonald's. And the coffee that McDonald's sells is the Tim Hortons coffee. So if you want Tim Hortons coffee in Canada, go to McDonald's. They've got the coffee now. Yeah, Visenko, I don't know when it was that you visited Canada. If it was prior to like 2017, the Tim Hortons coffee would have been good. If it was post 2017, yeah, the coffee would have been nothing great at all.
Additionally, in an annual Leger survey, it fell from 4th place to 50th in just 1 year. For a company
there
that
you
had
go.
consistently
There
been
it
in
is.
the top 10 for nearly 2 decades, these dramatic drops were a wake-up call. Canadians were left questioning whether the Tim Hortons they once knew and loved was slipping away, replaced by a profit-driven corporate machine that no longer reflected the values they cherished. As controversies and
Okay, I'm going to make one little disagreement there. I don't think most people had the idea, went with the concept of it doesn't have the values that they cherished anymore. Realistically speaking, the average customer is not going to give a shit about, oh, the company has great values. As cruel as this may sound, the average person doesn't give a fuck about the plight of the typical Tim Hortons worker. What we saw where they were talking about like the wages for the Tim Hortons workers and how they don't get paid breaks. Well, we understandably are, feel bad for the workers and we're pissed at Tim's about that. And I went on my whole fucking rant about it. The average consumer realistically doesn't care. The average consumer, when they go to a Tim Hortons, they're not going there thinking, oh, I feel so bad for these workers, and that Tim Hortons just doesn't have the same values it once had. No, they're going to Tim Hortons and they're going, is the coffee good? Is the food good? That's what they care about. And the coffee is no longer good. The food is no longer good. That is what the average person cares about. And that, I think, is what has truly led to the decline in, the popularity of Tim Hortons as a brand.
Reflected the values they cherished. As controversies and negative news piled up, Tim Hortons' brand began to show clear signs of trouble. The cracks started appearing in 3 key areas that had always been the backbone of its success.
Here we
Quality
go.
of its products, friendliness of its customer service, and most importantly, the emotional bond it had built with its loyal customers over the years. They indicated a significant shift in what had made Tim Hortons unique. From the taste of their coffee to the vibe in the stores, longtime customers started to feel the difference. As a result, the strong loyalty many Canadians felt towards Tim Hortons began to fade.
Okay, again, I'm going to partially disagree. The coffee, yes. The change in the coffee, abso-fucking-lutely resulted in a big difference. 100%. That I will agree with. The community thing, I don't know about that. Now, the fact that service at Tim Hortons has gotten much slower, that is more of a driving factor. No matter how much of a community feel a place has, if the service itself is slow, if the service itself slows to a crawl, that is what people will notice. They will notice that service has slowed down precipitously. When you are sitting for 20 fucking minutes in a drive-thru or 10 minutes at the counter, when normally you could get through it in 5 minutes or less because everybody was on the ball and they were able to basically work their jobs very quickly and efficiently, people will notice that. And honestly, there's another big factor, especially within the last 4 to 5 years. And there is no kind way to say this. Immigration has become a huge factor with Tim Hortons. Yeah, immigration has become a huge factor. Because now it's no longer people within the community that are working at Tim Hortons, it's all immigrants. You go to any Tim Hortons in Canada right now, and this honestly goes for just about every fast food restaurant in Canada, it is about 90% staffed by immigrants. Yeah, they keep the labor costs down, they keep the food costs high, Revan. But yeah, they are staffed 90% by immigrants, which you look at the timing, that's when service times started to increase, as in things started to take longer. And customers having to wait a long time, plus orders being done incorrectly because perhaps due to significant language barriers, that's causing an issue. Now the local community isn't working at Tim Hortons. It's because of the incredibly increased amount of immigration that occurred for the last 4 years. All of those positions are now filled by immigrants. And people locally can't get jobs there. And the business itself is suffering because of it. Oh, your dog? I am not sure. I don't know. I haven't looked into it because it's out of my wheelhouse. So I cannot say yes or no about the Canadian government subsidizing companies that do immigrant labor. I don't know. So I have no answer for you on that because I haven't looked into it. The one thing I do know is that, and I don't know if this has changed in recent years, is that immigrant students that work for Canadian companies, businesses, are limited to how many hours per week they can work. I think they can only work, I want to say 12 hours per week. For immigrants that come in on student visas, which are the majority of the immigrants that came over. A lot of them came over on student visas. They can only work like 12 hours per week. And but what that means is that these companies just hire a whole bunch of them, and one of them works 12 hours, then another one comes in and picks up the slack. It would not surprise me if if the Canadian government did subsidize subsidize these companies. Revan, it depends on where you reside. The minimum wage is different depending upon where you live. It's somewhere, let me see. I could probably give you an average. I'm gonna say the average is 15. Let's see. So the average minimum wage across all of Canada is about $16.40. Good night, Coyote. That's the average. So, okay, so for provincially, the minimum wage in Alberta is like $15 an hour, British Columbia $17.85, Manitoba $15.80. Although that's increasing to $16 per hour in October. Ontario is $17.20, increasing to $17.60 in October. Nunavut is $19 an hour. I'm pretty sure like the Atlantic provinces are probably like 15, maybe 16 if you're lucky. So it all depends on where you live as to what the minimum wage is. No, Mojo, I am a permanent resident. When I moved to Canada, I did it right. I did all the paperwork, and I am a permanent resident. I've been a permanent resident for years. So, theoretically, I could technically be considered I could potentially be considered an immigrant, but I didn't come in on a student visa with the express purpose of bringing my whole fucking family over. On that, bringing over like 16 family members from another country. I moved up here with immediate family, went through the proper process of permanent residency, and got to permanent residency. And I stay here. I obviously did not come to Canada only for education. I came to live. And thus I have. I forgot to, how did it get turned back on again? DS Weaver, thank you for the tier 1. I don't know how those got turned back on again. Anyway, so yeah, that's a factor in terms of the downfall of the quality of Tim Hortons is basically they slowed way the fuck down. The quality of the food has decreased, and the quality of the service has also significantly decreased. That was a very long way of me saying that.
This loss of trust was a serious risk to the brand's identity and its place in Canada. The most striking changes at Tim Hortons was the sharp decline in the quality of both the coffee and food.
Yeah.
Longtime customers quickly sensed that something was off, and not in a positive way. The coffee, once a daily must-have for many Canadians, began to lose.
Chat, look at that. Look at those grounds.
They became the Denny's of coffee chains.
Leo, you're not wrong. You're not wrong, honestly. Yeah, that's fucking nasty.
Lose its charm. The taste noticeably shifted, and as for consistency,
my dear God. That's fucking disgusting. Yeah, anybody that works there is supposed to wear a fucking hairnet. Ugh.
that became a distant memory. In fact, some of Tim Hortons' most loyal customers started making the surprising switch to McDonald's for better tasting coffee and a far more reliable experience.
And that's because McDonald's purchased the coffee supplier for Tim Hortons when Tim Hortons dropped it. That's why. That's why they all switched to McDonald's. Because when Tim Hortons got rid of their coffee supplier and started using Burger King's coffee supplier, McDonald's said, cool, we'll take that. And that's why McDonald's coffee is now superior.
The shift was undeniable, and it spoke volumes about the brand's downward spiral. The food followed a similar downfall. Items that were once freshly made in store were now simply frozen and reheated, resulting in a note.
There you go. What did I say? I was wondering if he was going to say that. There it is. Yep. All the food comes in frozen. None of it is freshly made.
Noticeable drop in both taste and texture. This change left many customers feeling let down and disconnected from the brand they had once cherished. But it wasn't just about the food itself.
I don't know.
It was the growing sense that Tim Hortons was cutting corners, prioritizing cost savings over the quality that had once made them stand out. Customers began to realize that the brand was losing touch with what had originally made it special, and that shift was hard to ignore. And it wasn't just the coffee and food taking a nosedive. Reports began to surface about a decline in customer service too.
There we
Complaints
go.
of longer wait times, botched orders, and a drop in the front.
Yes, fucking yes. This, right the fuck here. It is common to see lines out onto the street of Tim Hortons like this in the drive-thru. This has become common. It's why I stopped going to Tim Hortons for my morning coffee or breakfast sandwich when I was working retail. This is precisely why I avoided this at all costs. It's why I switched to McDonald's. This is why when, instead of going to Tim Hortons on my way to work in the morning, I would instead stop at McDonald's, which was not all that much of a step up, particularly with the food, and even to a degree, the wait times on occasion, but it was still an improvement over Tim's. And why, and you say, why, there are alternatives. There are alternatives, Atanashi, but for many people, it's habit. They've gone to Tim Hortons for a long time, and they don't want to change. Some of them are collecting points. They've got the Tim Hortons app, and they've been collecting points for years. And they use those points to get free food, and they don't want to change. They just want to maintain that habit. So that's why they don't. That's why they continue to go to Tim Hortons like this. And by the way, Sketty, thank you for the gifted.
The atmosphere that Tim Hortons had always been known for became increasingly common. These weren't just random mistakes, they were clear signs of deeper problems within the company.
Some there are.
Tensions between corporate leadership and franchisees were escalating. with heated disputes over cost-cutting measures and the impact of the minimum wage hike leading to public confrontations. Franchise owners, frustrated and feeling abandoned, started openly criticizing the company's direction. This internal conflict was spilling over into the customer experience, making it obvious that Tim Hortons was struggling to maintain the quality and service that had once set it apart. The brand's trademark warmth and reliability were fading fast, leaving many loyal customers disappointed and disillusioned. Tim Hortons has long wrapped itself in the Canadian flag, positioning itself as a core symbol of the nation's culture. From commercials featuring hockey scenes to the iconic maple leaf in their logo, everything is designed to scream Canada's coffee. But the reality is that ever since 3G Capital took over and merged Tim Hortons with Burger King, the brand's claim to being truly Canadian has started to feel empty. Despite this, they continue to lean heavily into the Canadian identity in their marketing, using national symbols while drifting further from the values those symbols represent.
Well, and it's ironic because out of all, it's kind of sort of they've become, I will say, nationalized. Because all of the other major companies in this industry, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, in the coffee side, Starbucks, all of those are American companies that have come to Canada. Tim Hortons is probably the only fast food nationwide franchise that is uniquely Canadian. And so they are desperately pushing that Tim Hortons is Canada's fast food or coffee restaurant that is surrounded by American companies. And so that's why they're pushing that nationalism of we are Canada's coffee. We are Canada's restaurant. Because they are. The problem is the quality of their product is subpar, is substandard. No, Savaha, it doesn't work. People don't like Tim Hortons anymore, generally speaking. They don't like the coffee sucks, the food is declined, and the service is terrible. So no, they can push the We Are Canada's brand all they want. It's not making a difference when the parent company has allowed quality and standards to drop to the floor. It makes no difference. And Bojo, I don't think it's AI. This actually doesn't sound like AI to me.
It's a strategy that comes across as increasingly hypocritical, as they try to profit from national pride without genuinely living up to it. Even though Tim Hortons still claims to be all about Canada, their actions paint a different picture. The shift to frozen food and the noticeable decline in quality don't align with the brand Canadians once loved. They may keep showcasing the Canadian flag in their ads, but when the coffee doesn't taste the same and the service falls short, feels like a letdown. Consumers today see through the marketing spin. We want brands to be authentic, not just tell us what they think we want to hear. Tim Hortons may still cling to that Canadian image, but it no longer feels sincere. If they want to regain the trust of Canadians, they need to go beyond waving the flag. They need to actually reflect the values they claim to stand for in how they run the business. And then there's the roll up the rim to win fiasco.
Is he going to talk about it?
For years, this was a beloved tradition that Canadians eagerly awaited every winter. Rolling up the rim of your coffee cup with your fingers, revealing the message, and hoping for a prize was more than just a promotion. It was an experience uniquely tied to Tim Hortons. It was fun and a small moment of excitement that customers connected with. But now they've gone and taken the whole thing digital. And let's be real, it just doesn't feel the same anymore.
There
this
you
shift
go.
to a digital-only version of Roll Up the Rim feels like yet another example of cost.
Boom! There it is. There it fucking is. This is what I was telling you guys about. You can only do Roll Up the Rim on an app, on your phone. And you have to actually sign up for the app. You can't just simply download the app and do the Roll Up the Rim. You have to actually sign up for it, which means they have your email address, which means they're going to be pushing advertisements to you. Exactly, Baumage. They want your data. Bingo.
Cutting, and frankly, laziness. Instead of that small thrill of physically rolling up the rim, you're now just tapping a screen. It takes away the nostalgic aspect of the tradition. For many, it feels like Tim Hortons is cutting corners again, trying to save money at the expense of what made their brand unique. Going digital might reduce their costs, but it's also stripping away the charm that came with the original event. The story of Tim Hortons' brand decline under 3G Capital's ownership serves as a powerful lesson for brands everywhere. The story here goes beyond basic business strategy. It's about the heart and soul of a brand. When 3G Capital took control, they implemented...
Well, Revan, like I was saying, you still have to buy something. You can't just use the app and just do roll up the rim. The way the roll up the rim works with the app is when you make a purchase, you open your app, and there's a QR code. And the employee scans that QR code, facilitates the purchase, and once the purchase is complete, then you will get your roll up the rim entries appearing on your phone after the purchase has been complete. So you still have to make a purchase in order to do the roll up the rim entry.
Heart and soul of a brand. When 3G Capital took control, they implemented aggressive cost-cutting measures in a bid to maximize profits. And yes, they did succeed in driving up financial gains, but the cost was far greater than they anticipated. In their quest for efficiency, they cut away at the very things that made Tim Hortons such an integral part of Canadian life. The result? A steady decline in product quality, a noticeable drop in customer satisfaction, and an erosion of the loyalty that had taken decades to build. These weren't just minor business missteps. They were betrayals of the deep trust that Canadians had in the brand. 3G Capital's obsession with profits didn't just hurt the company's bottom line. It damaged the core values and community connection that made Tim Hortons successful in the first place. This story is a clear warning about the dangers of prioritizing financial gain above all else. When a brand loses sight of the quality and values that initially earned its success, it doesn't just risk losing customers. It risks losing its identity. The trust and loyalty that takes years to build can be quickly destroyed when the focus shifts from serving people to serving profits.
Yeah. Honestly, the only way I think Tim Hortons has even a chance of coming back from this is if they separate from that parent company. They have to actually separate from that parent company, go independent once more, and they will need to do a massive restructuring of the business. They will need to completely restructure the business so that it's once again with find good coffee manufacturer again. And they need to start, bringing in some more fresh foods, like trying to actually bake on site again. And realistically speaking, it's a pipe dream. They are so in deep with the way they currently do things. It's just not going to work. They're in too deep that what it would take to facilitate the complete restructuring would basically mean shutting the Coke company down and rebuilding it from the ground up. That's how deeply entrenched they are in this current method of business that they're utilizing. It will take a complete shutdown and rebuild. And it's not going to happen. Realistically, it's not going to happen, unfortunately. And a once great Canadian coffee company, restaurant, is gone. It's not what it used to be.